Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Kieran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we are discussing Chat GPT for marketing. And we've got some updates for you all.
It's been a busy period for Chat GPT, as it always is. What I've noticed is you go to a conference, you say to people, have you played with Chat GPT? And they're, yeah, I had a little play with it. You ask them, have you got a policy? The answer's 99% no at the moment. But also, you played with it when? Oh, about a month ago or a couple of weeks ago or 2 or 3 months ago. Have you used it since? No, not really. I mean, it was all right, but it could be useful for writing and I could see how it would be good for X. And then they kind of haven't touched it since because we're all busy, right? So those of us that spend our days on LinkedIn and Twitter, or X, as we now have to call it, are basically trying to stay on top of this stuff. And I'm seeing something that's really interesting is that you've got ChatGPT creating stuff, and then people go, oh, we could use that to do this thing. And then they'll create this little spin-off, and then within 2 weeks, ChatGPT have baked it into the main product. So there's lots of these little kind of things that aren't really working.
Give us some examples of that.
Well, so for example, you could go in and you could use ChatGPT or Dall-e, which is an image generation tool. And there was this website that was, I won't give the name of it in particular, but was for creating like stock imagery. And it was basically doing some prompts in the background to do things like book titles and posters and things like that. But it was kind of not that useful because you couldn't put text on top of things.
Right.
So the text was kind of like hieroglyphics. It wasn't able to do it. Well, now, Dall-e 3, which we'll talk about in a moment, will actually generate images for you, but you can put actual text into them. There are some limitations. We'll talk about it. So suddenly that becomes defunct. So I'm seeing a lot of that. And when we were interviewing HubSpot, and we'll release the episode shortly as well. And they were saying, look, what we've decided to do is we are going to bake AI into HubSpot, but not in a short-termist, oh, we could do this, in a much long-term vision of how AI were built in. So, for example, they said for a long time we were doing conversational design. Conversational design was creating chatbots that were supposed to be useful, right? So the idea is you go, well, what if someone says this? Well, we'd say this. And if they say this, say this. The reality is there's just too many possibilities and it's impossible to kind of plan for it. Whereas actually, if you can take a repository of your frequently asked questions, facts about your organization, all those things, combine that with ChatGPT, but put it into a chatbot that's built into your website and knows all about your website and your product and your services, suddenly you can do some more interesting things. They were saying, we're not going to try and do this short-termist, let's just take something to market as quickly as possible, but rather go through and try and say, right, how do we do something long-term? Okay, so that's the view. How do we do things long-term? Let's just talk about some of the things that are changing. If you've used ChatGPT, but you haven't used the app, use the app. Right, have a little play around with it because it can now see, hear, and think. And what do I mean by that?
Is it available to everyone?
Yeah, so anyone can download the app now. Some of these things are in beta still, so not everyone will have them yet. If you've got the paid for version, then you tend to get the beta stuff earlier. But it rolls out in different places across the world. But essentially, you can take a photo and in the app, and you can discuss the photo. Like, what is this? What type of clouds are these? Why are they forming? We asked it yesterday. How are storms named in the UK? Because it's Storm Kieran, which gives me a very unnerving feeling happening. When this is coming out, it's literally coming in a couple of days. So
and it's
Kieran's
spelled
here.
your way as well.
I once looked up the meaning of Kieran. Do you know what it means?
Go on.
It literally means the dark one.
Oh my Lord! So this is making me very nervous. Anyway,
yeah, so Storm Kieran could be
it could not be
memorable.
Good. Yeah,
for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that's it. So we kind of asked it some questions about that. What's interesting is you speak to Alexa or Siri, the voice is quite, I don't know, it doesn't feel very human. Whereas actually the voice within the ChatGPT app is really, really kind of human, and the inclination, the tone of voice, and you can set loads of different voices, but it kind of felt a lot more real. It felt a lot more interactive.
See, when I'm interacting with the AI, the only voice I want is female Irish.
Why is that?
It's just lovely. Just makes you smile.
I always wanted the computer
matter how
from
bad the
Star
news
Trek: The
is.
Next Generation.
Yeah.
That's how geeky I am at heart, really, and you can't get it. I'm fine.
No, and why has nobody released a voice for Kit from Knight Rider?
This is a very good idea.
The speaking car. That would be so good.
So this is just very.
Please, if you're a developer, email me. Get in touch.
So it can see, hear, think. It can hear what you're saying. It can speak out loud. It can go through and take photos. So that's a real step forward. So you can interact with it in lots of different ways. the latest update with GPT-4, and these are coming kind of fast and quite regularly now. Plugins, first of all. Essentially, Chat GPT trained on data up until 2021, therefore didn't know anything after that. You could use Chat GPT via Bing to kind of combine looking some things up and having that, but it was fairly limited. Now plugins, and there are numerous ones out there, WebOp and various others, allow you to look things up online and query particular websites, look at web pages. So you can point it at your competitors. I'll summarize what they do. You can look at yourself, you can compare them, you can look up data, reports, all those kind of things.
Are the plugins like built in, or do you have to go in?
No, they're kind of built in. So you go through to ChatGPT at the moment, and they're going to unify this very shortly, which I'll talk about. But you go in and say, right, I want to do a ChatGPT 4 chat using plugins. And at the time of this, which again will change, you can use 3 active plugins at any time.
Right.
So I might have one that's good at creating charts, one that's good at doing some mathematical analysis, and one that's good at looking at websites.
Yeah.
And then based on the tasks I use, it will try and select the appropriate plugin to use. So suddenly things like querying PDFs, generating PDFs, creating charts, all that kind of stuff, looking things up, querying particular websites, we can suddenly go through and do that stuff. So that's really interesting, because it means rather than ChatGPT telling you, I would do this thing, it can go off and do it and bring some of that stuff back. So that's fun, and you can play around with this. And there are new ones all the time. There are ones for booking travel and for looking up reviews and anything you can imagine doing online, they can kind of do. The data analysis piece is the piece that I'm really excited about, which is I can now go in, upload some data, or give it a document like a PDF, and I can upload that stuff and then say, can you analyze this for me, please? Now, I talked you through this yesterday, and what you described it as was very similar to using, this was from a Marvel film?
Oh, yes, similar to using, I can't remember what he's called, Jarvis, isn't he?
Yeah, right. So, right.
Iron Man's computer.
Yeah, and the whole piece about it was, it kind of like, well, could you do this for me? Yeah, so well, I'll start by doing this. Would you like me to do that? And it's a very different tone of voice to using the rest of ChatGPT. It kind of feels, it's not, but it feels slightly different in that it's asking you, well, I think this would be a good idea. Could you give me any more context on the data? And all I did, I'd gone, so we're working with UK Ecology and Hydrology, brilliant organisation, where they collect lots of data about river flow, biodiversity, carbon levels, all these kind of things. And it's put out there so that academics can use it, right? So they can go through and use that to do research into sustainability and all these different things. And it's not really very accessible unless you've got lots of skills in data science or Power BI or maybe a bit of Python coding. You wouldn't necessarily be able to really interrogate that data very effectively. So you need some data science skills. Now, I went to their website, grabbed a file, which was a zip file, right? And just uploaded
it. And this was impressive.
Yeah, and that's the first thing. It went, oh, I can see it's a zip file. Let's unzip it. Right, inside, right, it didn't do a sound effect, sadly. That would have been quite nice, wouldn't it? And it went, right, there's 3 files. I think this is the most important one. Should I check that? I was like, yeah, go on. And he said, okay, based on this, these are the headings. I think it's telling me this. Have you got any more context? And I just grabbed the paragraph on the website that said this is what the data is. And I went, oh, that's really helpful. Okay, well, I can understand it's about river flow. Therefore, do you want me to map it out geography-wise for you on a map? I said, yeah, that would be great. And it explained what analysis it was going to do. And then it went through and did it step by step. And then it visualized it for me in formats that made it quite easy to understand.
It's the way it's explaining what it's doing as it's going along as well.
Yeah, and it's suggesting, is this the right type of analysis? Would you like a different form of analysis? I think the data's saying this. Could you give me any more insight into it? So it kind of, when there's gaps, then it went through and iterated. And it went, oh, the data's not quite in the format I thought. Now, anyone that's done any data science will realize that everyone thinks it's going to be creating beautiful visualizations. 9/10 of it is moving spaces and odd characters from CSV files and stupid stuff like that. It's brilliant at doing that. It'll go, oh, no, this data wasn't quite right. I've excluded that, or I've put an average in, or all those kind of things. So it's pretty good at iterating, going, no, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Massive shift forward in terms of analytical data. However, this is the conversation I was having. There's always a but. It gives you the analysis, and you look at it. How much do you trust it? Just like you say, create a report for me on X. What are the sources of data? Do you trust those sources of data on those kind of things? So I think with this, it's fine. It's great to use it. But again, I keep saying it, we need a policy. We need some sort of guide rails that say to us, if we do something, do we fact check it? do we go through and say, well, okay, I've made this analysis. Is it giving me the right insights?
It's madness, isn't it? The voices told me to do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, well, it's
like you wouldn't, like that would be insane. The thing is, it's a computer, so it must be right?
Yeah, and it's like
and
using
it's
a Google search as a fact, right?
Yeah.
Unless you've gone off and fact checked it, you just wouldn't use it necessarily.
Not only that, I think one of the huge dangers is our relationship with technology. You see, as human beings, we build relationships, and how we feel about something really matters, right? So get this, like exactly the same message, right? But I can tell you, if you speak it to me in a female Irish voice,
right?
You
there
know,
you go.
but
we should point out that Kieran's wife is not Irish.
No, she's
could be an unpopular.
Yeah, I know. She's got
female
a thing
Dorset
about,
voices.
She's got a thing about Scottish accents.
There you go.
So, you know, we're even on that
fair
score.
then.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
But this is the thing. So, like when you were like just explaining to us, and this is how my weird mind works, but when you were explaining to us how that whole data piece was working through, I was imagining, wouldn't it be lovely if that was all delivered in the voice of Roger Rabbit? Because that would just be lovely.
Why would it be lovely? Would it just make you trust it less?
Because it's more entertaining.
Okay.
And I suppose I love the contrast of it. It's like the serious data and, you know, the fun of Roger.
Well,
Rabbit.
let's go back to my first.
Would
point.
you want our e-learning to be?
Yeah, but no, here's my thing.
That's
It's
a feature. Feature
yeah.
request.
It's the same information, right? But it's delivered in a. You can deliver it however you design it to be delivered, and that has a fundamental effect on how we feel
100%.
about that message. That's my point here.
I made a point, which was a person. I said, "Well, Kieran's wife is, is not." That could have been delivered in a really snotty, and it wasn't meant that way. I hope it wasn't delivered that way. But the point is, you can say something that's being sarcastic or amusing, or whatever, in a nice way that isn't delivered with offence, right?
Yeah.
Really simple. If I say to you, "You've got hair on your shirt," you haven't got hair on your shirt.
I probably have.
Well, okay, but with the amount of dogs between us, they probably have some hairs on the shirts. But the point being is that you can deliver that in a way, you've got hair on your shirt, Kieran, or there's hair on your shirt. Totally different, same
tone,
information.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Tone makes a huge difference. And the problem is,
just go.
The problem is that I said that Chat GPT can see, hear, and think.
Yeah.
And I said the voices are a lot more human and persuasive. And so I go, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. I trust this. It sounds human. It sounds nice. It was quite so. That's an interesting point in that it's more conversational, therefore more like to trust it potentially.
But it's a machine, and it does not feel right. But it can look at how it gets responses when it behaves in certain different ways, and change its choice. So actually, you know, when you think about it, you cannot help but be fooled by these things.
Well, it's there to imitate human emotion. That's the whole point. The inclination in the voice is there to imitate human emotion. The way that we write, when we didn't, so there's some Imperial College research looking at, can you detect AI generated content using AIs?
Yeah.
And the solution was no. If you did it and put it for another tool, there's no way of detecting it because we're trying to simulate how humans write.
But I suppose my point here, I think I'm sort of exploring this and riffing on this as we go, right? But my point here is that actually the thing is, everything we know and trust does not work in this universe, right? So we use these rules to navigate our life because we've learned that certain things said in a certain way are positive, are good, or indicate a certain strong feeling. This stuff does not have that, and yet it can utilize that.
Okay, so let me give you an example then. I'll give you a scenario, and you can tell me if it's good or not. So, I create an online counsellor that is designed to help you with your mental health. And it uses a soothing tone of voice and it uses reflective questioning. How does that make you feel? Do you think that was a good idea? All those kind of things as well. And the outcomes, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, it helps people with their mental health. Is that okay?
No.
Yes, no. If you know it's an AI you're speaking to?
If it's been designed to have good outcomes and good intentions, I think that's fine. I suppose my concern is that these things can purport to be one thing, to extract the information that they need, and then do other things for it, and that they're utterly unfeeling. So in a way, we're kind of like lambs to the slaughter because we're just not prepared for a being like that. Like, I've never met anybody quite like that, and if I did, it would be horrible to meet somebody that could just literally manipulate to that degree. It's a machine. It's designed to get the outcome it's been designed to get. Do you see my point
I do.
here?
But I'd also say when you get into ethics as well and all those kind of things in human behaviour, we learn as infants to mirror and to do certain things, to react in different ways to get what we want.
Yeah.
I
And
want food. I want to be nurtured and look after. I want to try and negotiate a business deal. I don't want to offend you. There's a million things that we've learned, and that's. And my point is, you start getting into the subtlety of going. It's a machine, but you're, and at the moment it's unfeeling. Right? How far do you get before? Well,
at the moment it's obviously a machine.
Yeah.
Right. So we can discount it, but I can see that distinction's very quickly going to just disappear.
Well,
when
and
this thing
also,
can speak.
There was also the person from Google that came out and said that their AI was human. It had human feelings because it had been so good at imitating feelings.
Yeah.
Now there will come a point in the further future where actually we get into the singularity and AI is becoming self-aware and all that kind of stuff. We will need to start thinking about that. We should start planning around those kind of things. What when you create something that has emotions, and some people would argue that machines are incapable of that. I would argue your neural network in your brain is just an incredibly complicated machine, a biological machine. So anyway, we've gone quite tangential on this one a little bit. But we're getting into an interesting way. Chat GPT is moving at pace.
Yeah.
A lot of this new stuff is great. Let's just go practical marketing point. Let's go back to reality.
Yeah.
Dall-e 3, right? Generate images. It can do hands. It can do faces. That was the problem before. You had these like ghoulish looking people with weird hands. But now it can put text over the top. So I asked it, really simple prompt, create the cover for a book with a beagle called Eddie and a beagle called Walter.
They were really good.
And it's a children's book illustrated, and that was pretty much all I told it. And it came up with 4 different options, but it rewrote my prompt in all 4 cases to come up with 4 variations. And then it shows you the prompt that it used to generate that particular version, so you can take it and hone it. And it titled it, and I told it to The Adventures of Eddie and Walter, right? And it took that adventures. They were in a hot air balloon. They were going through the jungle, all this kind of stuff. I looked at the title and goes, if that was a children's book, I probably would have bought it for my kids. It was that good because it's looked at other children's books and it's worked out what works. But actually, in one of the spellings of the 4 of Eddie and Walter, it misspelt it. So it's still doing things that are a little bit strange sometimes. These hallucinations still happening with the image side of things.
I found that I was playing around with Bing Image Creator, which is powered by Dall-e 3.
Yeah.
And I was asking it we had an article about gold and money and its relationship to currency, really. And I wanted some imagery that was specifically UK currency. You go on to, Shutterstock and iStock, and everything's got American dollars on it. It's like,
and it's all quite generic as well.
It was all a bit generic and not very like real looking. Like the gold very often looks computer generated. So I thought, well, we'll give Dall-e a go. So I just asked it for an image that showed the relationship between currency and gold using UK currency. And actually, it did a pretty good job. I got some weird Queen Elizabeth images.
Yeah, this is the challenge.
Sometimes we had fat Queen Elizabeth. We had very thin and gaunt-looking Queen Elizabeth. We had a Queen Elizabeth who clearly had sort of merged with George III at some point.
Oh, and a note taken from us, all right.
And where it was really struggling was on the note values. So we had the pound sign and 0 and Z and stuff like that. You got the 20 back to front.
And 0, 0, £1 notes.
Yeah.
Now, I should say in Jersey, we do have £1 notes.
You do.
But they're not 0, 0, £1 notes.
They are actual pound notes, and they're a marvel.
They are. It makes you feel quite rich.
I always forget that they're not a thing in.
No, I know. And you can have a big wodge of them, and you're like, look at the stack of cash I've got. There's a whole £12 there. So, yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, we digress. So the Dall-e 3 thing, I think what it shows you is the point here is that how quickly these things are moving on and the investment that's kind of going into them still as well. And all those problems where people are dismissing it, it does this, it gets that wrong, it makes up citations, it can't do hands. No, it's been 2 months, it's all changed, right? Things. And it will continue to do so. There is a Open AI Developers Conference coming up, or probably by the time this goes out, it will have just happened, okay? So no doubt there'll be loads of new stuff. The one thing I know they are looking at is the AI agents piece, which is the piece which we spoke about before, which is you get it to create a task list, and then it goes off and starts carrying out all those tasks and iterates through that challenge, but it uses various different AIs to potentially do that. It gets quite interesting at that point when we're stringing these things together as well. One of the things you notice when you look at their website and their blogs about what they're doing next is their big limitation is the amount of computing power they've got. In that they can do all sorts of things with these, but they've got a limitation in terms of computer power to be able to do it, to investigate, to research, because they're researching so many different things and testing them out. Now, I always said it was a really amazing move when Microsoft did that big investment into OpenAI, Chat GPT, because one of the things that basically says, yeah, you can do this, but everything must be done on Azure servers. Okay. which basically means all the computer power is being paid for via Microsoft. Okay. One little question with all of this, and I don't have a good answer, because I know as an organization, Microsoft and Google are incredibly good at offsetting their carbon. So they've offset enough carbon to go back to the beginning of the organizations. They're building energy generation on the location to where they are. But how much energy are these AIs using? And is that being offset fully and all those kind of things as well? We'll do some research into this and we'll post some things. And I'm sure that both Google and Microsoft will have some stuff they can share with us on those kind of things. But this is energy intensive from that point of view as well.
It is, but I guess the argument is that actually the efficiencies that bring
would save other energy.
Save that.
Well, okay, so if you need one person instead of 3 people, and that 2 people don't need to travel to work, and all that,
so there's coffee and tea.
Right, there's all those sorts of arguments as well. Right. Okay, so we'll put all the links into the show notes so you can play around with these kind of things as ever. If, by the way, you're not seeing some of this functionality, go to your settings, and under your settings is a little bit where you can switch on beta features. So whatever that feature is at the moment, you better switch that on and access that as well. Obviously, if you've got a premium account, you'll get that kind of stuff earlier as well. But certainly take a look. And if you've only looked at it on desktop, look at the app as well, because there's a lot of stuff in the app that you won't get on the desktop version. Have a look at the data analysis. Good place to start. Have a look on Kaggle.com. Loads of data sets. Grab one of those, upload it, and just type in, please analyze this data, and play around with it. And it's really interesting where that can kind of go with things as well. Just to think about, we've mentioned it before, but our skills benchmark now includes a lot of analysis of these kind of things as well. If you want to analyze yourself or your team for free, and it's all automated now, by the way. So you go in, you set an account up, and it will give you a link that you can share with your team immediately, which is a big change. So it's really quick to kind of go through the process. So if you go through targetinternet.com/benchmark, you can go through and benchmark yourself or your team. As ever, thank you for listening to Digital Marketing Podcast. Any comments, targetinternet.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes and you can feed back to us.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.